There's one of the jackhammers outside. Really sounds like Chinese-made AK.
There was one of them there the last day. I didn't notice it for ages. I was just going for like a half an hour or more and writing the book thing. And then I just noticed it and I couldn't unnotice it then, you know?
Yeah.
It's man of your brain. It's like, yeah. Wait, what's that?
What's that?
What's that noise?
Joe Finbar hired someone to do a load of like work out the back of their house before.
Right.
And your man was like, look, I can't do it, but there's a young fella there in town who'll do it for you. It's down in Kerry. And Finbar's like, geez, your man's whacking away all day there with the Kango.
Yeah.
Goes down to him after a couple of hours and he had the Kango with a zip tie around the thing, just resting up on a block. Just your man was gone.
What?
So the Kango was just running.
Why was he doing that?
So nobody'd be giving out to him for not working because they'd hear the Kango going. And he just left. Yeah.
Is Finbar free?
Yeah.
What the fuck? How old is your man?
16 or 17, I think.
That's some ingenuity.
Yeah. Cute Kerry Hoor.
We're back with the live stream. I'm going to close the door. We'll just give it a few seconds, lads, before we get going.
I hope everyone's doing well.
While you're hanging on, if you could just like the live stream.
Like the live stream, and then whoever's in the same building as you, if you could invade their personal space, take their phone, and just log into the live stream as well, that would work.
They put ads on the live stream, but we don't get any revenue from them.
No.
At crafty YouTube. Just YouTube's always out to get you. YouTube's always trying to.
They get you at every possibility.
Isn't that bear just some horse?
Yeah.
220 squat jerk is. There's no need for it. What's he at? All right now, ladies. Yeah.
Excuse me. Oh, some good questions already.
But is there a 220 squat jerk question? Look at that. 220 squat jerk.
I hope nobody sees this and thinks they should start squat jerking.
I actually think that would dissuade people from doing it because you'd be like, "Oh, it's not for me."
Yeah.
First up, we've got. Oh no, I'm going to top chat, but I'm going to go live chat.
Oh, you've got to go live chat.
Possible review of vertical diet from a personal perspective.
Did you not do one?
No, I don't think I ever did one. A few people have asked about that though, so maybe I should. Is our exposure very bright? Are we very bit of a halo effect going on?
Are we very? Do you want me to adjust it? I have a feeling like.
Is it on camera? It's on camera again. You gotta leave it on the audio. You gotta switch over to this.
No. It has to stay on that setting.
Why?
Otherwise, the auto refocuses all the time. I just look. Oh no! Far too dark. Way too dark. Stop.
That one.
Go back.
This one.
Go back. There.
We'll leave it at
that. Leave it there.
Oh, it's not fork. Ah, that's much better. So yeah, I just never did one because I kind of started it long before we even had a YouTube, so it wasn't something that was fresh in my mind. Maybe I should at some point. I see nutrition isn't something we really do that much, so I don't know what.
We try and stay away from nutritional pieces.
Yeah, so I don't know what I'd add to it so much in that regard. I know a couple of people have done reviews. I really like this, and I still take a lot of aspects from it. Yeah.
If I was you, and when I'm telling people or like advising people about the vertical diet, I use it as use that as your guide and your way of eating, like clean carbs that you can easily digest, lean meat that's not full of shite, and then like make sure you're hitting your micronutrient markers, but does it have to be ground bison? Probably not.
Yeah, I think that's.
Is there other carb sources? Probably.
But that's the idea. Is this the most effective ones? Like
yeah.
So that's just his shtick. Like, if you paid attention.
I've read it.
So these are the new graphic T-shirts that'll be released soon. So this on the back, Stand Strong, is just a little character, a little backstory of that. And then this is our just a different logo we're trying just for a graphic T-shirt, not a change in logo, but it's the it's just it's like a pro sports,
pro hockey T-shirt.
Yeah. The graphics will be rotating.
It'd be great if everybody who's interested in buying T-shirts commented in the stream, because it would give us an idea of how hard you're going to have to tussle to try and get one. Okay. Hassan Masood says, thoughts on conjugate system? No, is my main thought. I really don't think conjugate has a place for almost any athlete anymore. I think there's better ways of doing things. We're obviously always going to side with our programs. I see there's a question about 5-3-1 programming down lower. There's different programming questions. Our thoughts on programming is fairly set out there. I think most people will, if you've listened to us talking about programming, will have a good idea of what we think good programming is. Conjugate goes against almost all of that. You just need consistency. You need gradual accrual of volume and gradual increase of intensity over time. You need specific blocks focusing on specific pieces, and then you need to transition from block to block. Well, you need to have longer term planning with your training. And conjugate basically goes against most of what I would think to be good programming practices.
But then I listened to, I think it was like Remembering Louis Simmons on Mark Bell's podcast, or it might have been Dave Tate. One of them was talking about it. And they said, if you think you knew what Louis was doing, you didn't know. Because if you think you didn't read programming, he did every sort of programming. So that leaves you going, which was it? So was it just entirely conjugate, or did he do traditional programming to get people better? Like which was it? And I think it's kind of a shitty answer. That's kind of a mittens there where you're like, okay, it was kind of stupid, where he took just a shitload of gear to get better. Or did he actually do a lot of traditional programming and got better from that regard? So I think I think it's kind of it's a bit weird after his death to be kind of saying things like that. But if that's true, then was it a lie all along going about that way of saying they were doing things like that, So I
think as well, anytime you get a load of really competitive athletes training in the same environment with a heap of drugs, and in an environment where the best athletes are going to want to come and train there, like because they had the name of like the strongest gym in the world or whatever, you're always going to have great numbers, like whether your system's shite or not. Not saying it is shite or was shite, but for us, nobody would do conjugate, I don't think. Or sorry, nobody would do the thing that people think conjugate is.
I think as well, it's why would you want to do conjugate, I think, is the question. Like why? And I think this often comes to people who are in like a early stage, intermediate point in your training, or
they've gotten past the beginner stage.
Yeah, and you're like, I'm gonna do something different, because you might be a little bit unsure of what to do, or you might be a little bit lost in regards to your programming. And I think it's a lot of times the people you see do that are not the people who are the strongest. You don't see people like Shane Hunt asking this question or wondering about this kind of topic, or it's typically people who are at the middle of kind of strength numbers. Typically, sometimes you'll see athletes ask it, and that's for a different reason. They're asking it for a reason where they're like, okay, maybe the speed work and stuff might be better for my training. And it's kind of I suppose, an understandable point of view. But then we have people who are at a stage in their training where there's a long way to go yet. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's misplaced confidence in that they might have a better idea, or it might be a place of, I don't know what gives people that thought process. I think it might be just part of figuring things out as you're going into your strength training career, and specific because it's conjugate system. It's kind of unique to that strength training thing where I don't know what it is. I think it's just part of thinking about things, maybe, and where people are like, maybe the conjugate system is a better system. I would imagine a lot of times people come into this question is when they've recently hit some kind of plateaus and they're like, okay, maybe what do I need to figure out?
I think that's the main thing, though, is that when people have gone through that first stage, like, people always expect the line to be trending up, and the line will always trend up if you zoom out far enough. And then I think, but we always expect the slope of the line of progression to be the same, and people will get to the end, and it might be like once you get to a double bodyweight squat or bodyweight and half squat, and they're now going beyond their beginner phase of training, they think something needs to change. In reality, you just need to keep banging on that door constantly, accruing volume, going through different phases of training. Like, just why, when you used a certain system to get you from a 60 kilo squat to 160 kilo squat, why would you now suddenly think, and it's everybody does it intuitively, is like, oh, I need something different now, I need to change something now, or once I'm at that double bodyweight squat, I need to change how I'm going to train. Like, you're not, the physiology of getting from 100 to 200 is the same as the physiology of getting from 200 to 300. It just takes a lot more work and a lot more time and a lot of other stuff.
Patrick Louise, is there a less technical lift than the power clean with similar benefits for athletes? Heavy kettlebell swing, trap bar jumps. So we did a paper review on this a couple of months back where I compared traditional resistance training plus plyometrics versus Olympic weightlifting, and essentially the outcomes are the same. So Patrick, just normal resistance training, traditional strength training plus plyometrics will get you almost the exact same benefits as the Olympic lifts with negligible differences. The only thing that Olympic lifting will have that's slightly more beneficial than traditional resistance training plus plyometrics is the resistance of heavy loads under really a dynamic scenario. So catching heavy cleans is super beneficial. You've requires a high amount of flexibility, fascial changes. Now you get those in plyometrics. You get them to a certain extent with weighted plyometrics, which may or may not be the right option, but you really get them with the heavy weights involved and heavy snatches and clean and jerks. And there is a benefit to that. The irony, I suppose, or the caveat to that is that we don't see a lot of athletes even doing full cleans that often. And there is a benefit to be able to catch heavy cleans at the bottom, under a fast environment, catch them with good technique, move there fast. You're not under a fully controlled environment. There is an element of speed to that clean. Especially, Patrick, when you're doing something like BJJ, for example, that is somewhat beneficial, but certainly not necessary. So that's like the one asterisk I put next to strength training plus plyometrics versus like strength training and Olympic lifting, is that you do get a little bit more on that side of things where you are really forced to catch things on heavy loads as fast as possible in a fully flexed environment with, maximum stretch and fascias and ligaments and tendons. But you get a lot of that benefit too from plyometrics. You get a lot of that, obviously, stretch, shortening, reflex. So there's not really a whole lot of difference between them. So don't get caught up in the idea that you have to do Olympic lifts. I usually put down the Olympic lifts to a priority. It's like, oh, I'd like to do Olympic lifts, or a preference rather than a priority. The options available for you are just traditional plyometric training and obviously strength training. So stuff like starting with like squat jumps, just literally squat jumps on the spot. Move on then potentially to straight-legged box jumps. Then you could maybe move on to some bent leg box jumps where you catch them slightly into the squat. After that, then you could proceed to do things like sitting on a box and then jumping onto a higher box. So we sit down the box and we stand up and jump. Then a further progression beyond that then would be usually something like depth jumps. So depth jumps would be the kind of uppermost tier of plyometric training and shouldn't be used all year round because it is quite fatiguing. So depth jumps would be the latter tier of the options available for plyometrics. But the start is literally hops, squat jumps, then squat jumps or box jumps, and then higher box jumps, then some kind of hurdle jump, for example, where you jump over something, or you take a little bit longer jumping, then you go from sitting on a box to jumping onto a box, and finally that depth jump then where you are stepping off like a 20 kilo plate and then work your way up to, well,
a step ladder.
Well, there is cases where the Russian athletes used to jump from things like a meter or more. Not necessary. It was very productive for them, but it's certainly not necessary. Certainly for someone like you in your scenario, Patrick, strength training and some routine plyometric stuff would be very beneficial.
On the point of the heavy kettlebell swings and the trap bar jumps, I actually don't like the trap bar jumps at all, because I've used them in the past with athletes. I've used them in the past when I was training as an athlete. And I don't like the trap bar jumps for two reasons. I think firstly, the mechanics of how you jump changes drastically when your two arms are strapped into something like this, and like that natural counter movement you'll have of a jump up changes. It really changes the dynamics of lift. I think it ends up becoming something that's far more of a kind of like static start. It's a really strange jump basically, and you don't utilize a stretch shortening cycle, which is one of the main things we utilize in any kind of jumping or explosive movement. And then you have the massive issue, and this is probably the biggest issue, of you coming down to the ground with a barbell in your hands. And I never really like that. Like a barbell on your back, I'd prefer than a barbell hanging on both your hands like this, particularly if you're strapped into the bar. Even at moderate loads, I think it's almost never good, particularly when you consider one of the first things we do as we land is we incline our torso forward. That's a natural part of landing, is that we'll break at the knees, break at the ankles, break at the hips, and our torso will come forward so we can kind of hinge over and absorb some of that force. Now we have the opportunity or the chance where we're hinged forward in a barbell or a hex barbell in our hands, and we're coming down under load for that. So I almost never like those for athletes. Heavy kettlebell swings, I think, have their merit in the same way where Gurf was talking about heavy cleans and catching and receiving a barbell in that position, and that kind of really heavy eccentric loading in that amortization phase when you're stopping the barbell. I think heavy kettlebell swings can certainly have that thing of, as you're bringing the kettlebell back in and you're absorbing some of that kinetic force and then turning it around and throwing it again. I think there's definitely a value in that. But most of the time, the kettlebells aren't going to be heavy enough to get anywhere kind of remotely close to that kind of power output unit or that power output level of force. Gaxi Hunter says, opinions on Enson's 531 program. I don't have one. I don't know what Enson's is.
No, I've seen that a few times, but I don't know. Literally have no idea.
Tom Lawley says, afternoon, fellas. Scott Kerr says, got squats tonight. Have 1,500 calories to eat before 7:45. What should I eat? What should you eat? And what we think you should eat are two different things. If this squat session matters, you should just eat the same thing you eat every single day. Don't change it at all. If it was me and I had to live in your body and I had 1,500 calories to eat, I'd probably go to McDonald's and I'd get a double quarter pounder meal with Coke Zero. And then I'd have some Zero Monster, maybe an additional 200 or 300 milligrams of caffeine after that. Then
I would eat a burrito bowl, which would probably take you to like 800 calories. And then I'd eat somewhere in the region of maybe 2 brownies, which I think would get you the last like 700-ish. Is what I would do if I was you. I'd eat them now, because by the time you come out of a coma at 7:45, you should be ready to go. No name says, what's up, my Irishman? Hello, sir. Gian Pauli Uraib says, are there any aspects of training you believe in if there's not a lot of evidence due to personal experience or observation?
Yeah, I'm like healing crystals in the gym with me.
I don't know. Is there anything? Is there anything you believe in, even if there's not a lot of evidence?
Due to personal experience or observation? I've definitely believed things in the past and fought against people who would have quoted literature and studies and different pieces back at me. I can think of probably 2 different occasions where that was true, and I've since changed my mind, but I obviously would never let the people know who I used to fight against about that. The first of those was the use of an elevation training mask, or restrictive breathing apparatus as you were breathing. It turned out that I was actually right, but I was wrong in my explanation of it. I have around 6 rib fractures, so my lung capacity ended up being very, very restricted for 2 or 3 years. And when I got the elevation training mask, it allowed me to really increase my lung capacity, to a drastic extent, like probably a 30% or 40% increase. And my aerobic values went through the roof because of that. Now, in that case, obviously some specific training was needed, and it gave me that specific training. In the literature, elevation training master, breathing restrictive apparatus get a fairly hard time. They particularly get a fairly hard time when they're compared to things like living at altitude, training at altitude, living low and training high, or living high and training low. Any of those things, particularly if you're actually in the environment of decompression and compression, where the actual pressure on your blood is changing, it's not going to give you value similar to that. But the elevation training mask can actually give you some positive breathing training. And that was something that I was kind of all for it. Then I drifted away from it as I saw more of the research, and then in my own kind of thinking and musing and ruminations around it, I have changed my mind back.
I do have one actually. So
is it the crystals?
No, it's not the crystals. Obviously, there's loads of evidence for those. You just have to read the right journals. It's around the aspect of speed training, and while there is evidence for what I'm going to say, this is more of a broad stroke cultural thing. And I know you think this. We've talked to other people who are involved in elite level sports who also agree with this. So it's kind of an interesting, but I won't say who they are, just lest I oust them. But a lot of people trying to get faster will never get faster. And of all traits in athleticism, speed is probably the most predetermined by genetics. And it's the least susceptible to improving from training, and probably the most susceptible from negatively affecting yourself with training. So we're talking about like straight speed, then just like straight line velocity, like in one direction. I think a lot of people, and they would never be able to like kind of prove this, but a lot of people mostly are fast because of genetics and not because of the way they've been training. And I think it's most people just make themselves either no better at all or slightly worse in training after a certain period. Now, there's obviously exceptions to that rule. That's why I said most people. But I think speed is like one of the traits that is like mostly predetermined, or the most just intertwined with genetics. And other people have like, we've talked to them about this, and they've really like kind of had similar thoughts. It's hard to like verbalize it in that way because there is people who get faster from training, so that's like an immediate argument against that. But as an overarching kind of comment on culture, I would say,
yeah, I think a lot of the time people are getting faster outside of the aspects of speed training. You know, I think there's like 3 areas where training will make you faster, but it's not necessarily that you're getting any faster, that you're doing specific things to make you faster. I think people oftentimes don't have the capacity to run a certain speed for a certain amount of time repeatedly. And due to some amount of training, they gain that capacity and they're better able to express their genetic talent. I think the second thing is that their joints actually don't have the capacity, and like the connective tissues don't, and they'll end up popping hammies, or they'll end up not being able to maintain a certain posture or a certain stride for long enough because the joints themselves or the connective tissues themselves can't do it. And some training will allow them to express their genetics better. And then the last thing I think is that sometimes people have very, very, very poor running technique. And they'll be like swatting at the ground or whatever. And it through some sort of of training, they'll improve their running technique and their running time will go down. But none of those three are speed training. Like one of them is joint integrity training, one of them is aerobic value improvement, and then the other one is some sort of technical error that you're fixing, you know. But
like, I think a lot of time in speed training, you're just realizing what you can do rather than improving on it, you know, as opposed to strength training, where you're certainly improving on your current capacities, your max abilities, you know. Oh, there's also another thing. Way more IPF lifters are on drugs than people should believe. George Latter says, any weightlifting exercises that you think are overrated, underused by coaches? Jerk recoveries are overrated.
Oh my God, yeah. I think stuff from blocks,
SATs press,
just putting stuff on blocks for no reason.
Mhm.
Like a lot of time they'll have like 4 days of weightlifting and they'll go, day 1 will be a pretty normal session, then day 2 will be from blocks, then day 3 is a normal session, day 4 hip cleans, yeah,
hip snatches,
anything super high in the hang position is like probably not that valuable.
Yeah.
But yeah, the block stuff for me is like, and the high hang stuff really is
the big one.
Like you're putting it in there to fill space because you're afraid to have it too specific.
Yeah.
And you think there's no way that people will be able to do it, you know, but yeah.
And like to a certain thing, I don't think it's overused, but probably over much maligned is like the tempo squats. Oh, Jesus. I have one. 4 position snatches and cleans.
Oh, anything with a pause on the way up that's not like an immediate fix for a problem that's there right now.
No, the 4 pauses.
No,
are the snatch on the floor, the low hang, the high hang, and then the higher hang. That's a big one. No, that the 4 positions.
Get out of here.
That's the most CrossFit of programming ever. That's a doozy.
I'm gonna make this novel and not an effective training tool.
Tim is snatching or clean composition tomorrow. Best of luck, Tim. Recently got 100. Wasn't it? Oh no, 10. It was 110. Was it 110? Or 115? No, it was 115. Or was it he's capable of 115?
Did he miss 115 and smash 110?
Tim, keep it safe and do 120. I think that's the best.
Tim, all we can ask of you is to open too heavy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yes.
Harry Arnold says thoughts on beta alanine as a supplement. Joe, there's loads of benefits out there, particularly for like the high capacity aerobic work. Was some of the more recent stuff. I was just reading up on it for me for the mile training, you know. But Jesus Christ, your face and your back and your asshole and everything will just be like
what?
Tearing.
Interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For me, that's a bit inhibitory. Like I already feel like a psychopath when I'm training, and that doesn't help.
They're saying here that it is effective for improving strength, but I'd wonder. Wonder.
You know, most supplements that are actually effective in doing anything for you are banned.
Except for caffeine.
Except for caffeine, and that was banned, you know. Creatine can be very effective for some people. Most of the time, though, you'd get far more out of proper sleep regulation and proper dietary protocols and hydration than you would from a specific supplement like that, you know. Now, obviously, there's some supplements people take to make a massive difference to them, but
steroids.
For me, the scratchiness on the face and wanting to skin myself while still alive is a massive barrier for entry. I get sometimes my eyelids are itchy.
Oh, go away.
Yeah.
No, I've literally never used. I've never taken any beta alanine outside of like maybe might have been in an energy drink or something, but I've never actually used it.
No, I've had multiple pre-workouts with it in it. Merrick Cleote.
It's my Merrick, I think.
Is that your Merrick?
I think it is, yeah.
Merrick, one of the horses in the Sika stable, says, "What's your view on daily undulating periodization?" Will I just give my little one-liner?
Go for it. Yeah, go for
I
it.
hate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really don't like it. Now, if you were to go through every one of my athletes and looked at their programs for the last 4 years, is there some months of training in there that might look like it's slightly daily undulating periodization? Possibly, right? possibly some transitionary phases, possibly some phases of training where we're really focusing on one or two aspects. And it may look as if it's daily undulating periodization, but no. For me, I really don't like it.
The aspect you probably like is increase in volume sometimes.
I do like that.
You're a devil for that.
I am a devil for that.
A lot of times
adding sets.
Yeah, are you adding reps and keeping the weight the same from some weeks? Something I don't typically do, but it is handy, if you can increase the number and the amount of volume you do with a given weight. You don't always have to increase the weight at certain periods of training, But as a rule, I don't know anyone who's effectively used daily undulating periodization to a T, like to really stick to what it's supposed to be, Nick McCann saying, how long should I wait after running Gabriel's 6-week squat program before running RTA? Also, should I use my runner M from that 6-week block or take some off it? Thank you. I would say 6 weeks is probably fairly intense. If you PB'd from it, I'd give it something in the region of 3 weeks. I think you'd probably be okay to go. Just do some maintenance squatting. I haven't seen Gabriel's 6-week squat program. I assume it goes kind of like 3 weeks of progressive increase, peaking towards the end. So I'd say give it somewhere in the region of like 3 weeks. Just squat once or twice a week between that period and do some maintenance stuff. And I would just keep the same 1RM given it's recent. And once you feel fresh and ready to go again, you can run the RTA.
Weighted Sum says, in terms of programming, how would you quantify fatigue for snatches and clean and jerks? Question mark, as a percentage of front squats, question mark. So I certainly wouldn't use it as a percentage of front squats. In terms of quantifying fatigue for snatches and clean and jerks, it really depends. It depends on the volume of snatches and clean and jerks you're doing, and then the relative intensity or relative weight you're doing that volume at. Also, what you need to look at is the frequency of snatches and clean and jerks per week. So you could have a week where you have 5 sessions of clean and jerks, and all of those sessions being quite light, but you may have a lot of volume in there. That wouldn't be overly fatiguing. Now, if in 2 or 3 of those sessions, that relative intensity or relative weight you're lifting in the clean and jerk pops up, that could be the week from hell. So it really is, they are their own thing, particularly with the clean and jerk. The clean and jerk can tear you apart once those weights or the relative intensity starts creeping up there, So in terms of quantifying fatigue, you need to figure out a kind of weekly total that you're able to do, a weekly amount of volume or a weekly volume load that you're able to do. The best way to do that is look at what you've been doing for the last 2 or 3 months. You can start quantifying volume load by doing sets by reps by load, and it probably works better for most people if they do sets by reps by percentage of 1RM. So if I was quantifying a weekly load and I did 5 by 5 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I did 5 by 5 at 50%, then I would have 25, 25, 75. Then I'd have 67.5%. Or else I've gotten my maths wrong, right? 67.5 is my number then. I would use that as a volume load number for the week. And I would go from there. That mathematics was so wrong. I would have 37.5%. Jesus Christ, that's terrible maths. But yeah, that's how I'd work it out. I'd use an arbitrary volume load figure, sets by reps by load, and take load to be percentage.
The thing with weightlifting is that it's not necessarily you need to increase volume. It's the weights you're doing. So an easy way of knowing if you're too fatigued, or a possible way given context, is if you made reasonable progressions and you didn't make them, it's a likely indicator that you're too fatigued, because the big thing in weightlifting isn't the increase in your volume. Like, you don't look to do that. You don't look to get to more sets with 80 kilos per se. Now, at some points you will a little bit, but mostly you'll be looking at increasing the average weight and your volume stays the same. Typically, volume is the most fatiguing aspect compared to intensity. So you get to a certain volume and then you learn what number of sets and reps is the ones you need to be doing to be progressing. And then you progress the weights from week to week. And then you'll learn how far you can push it, how long you can push those increases in weights before you get too fatigued. So the quantitative way of finding or quantifying fatigue in weightlifting is when you start missing weights and you feel terrible.
If you feel like you could start crying at any moment.
Yeah, sometimes it's worth keep going for a little bit though. Like weightlifting is a speech strength sport, so some of the aspects of speed training do apply. You know, when it's not happening and you're not moving fast, you're not moving well, that is a good indicator of fatigue because, again, weightlifting is a speed strength sport, so it does have those traits, you know. 89 Charlo says, finally caught the stream.
Woo!
Finarva says, howdy. Release date for the training pants. It will be within the next 5 weeks, I would say, because we're really happy with them now. I'm really happy. Like, they are super happy. Are they the newest of the new?
These are the newest of the new.
Yeah, super happy with the new pants. Like, they're really confident in selling them and getting them to people. Like, they're a great training plan.
People will be delighted with them.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Are the shirts out already? So these are, we actually just met with our printers today. So these are the 2 shirts. One of them is like a professional hockey shirt or NFL kind of shirt. It just has the Seeker Strength logo on the back in black. This is the back of the graphic tee then, with Stand the Strong. Not sure. Oh, they can see it quite well. If you're watching this in HD, you should be able to see it quite well. It's the mythical Stand the Strong fighting a bear with a barbell. On the front, then we'll just have Seeker Strength on the front chest of that. So they're going to be the 3 pieces of merch that are coming up.
The front tit.
The front tit. Schmear, schmoomy, natty or not. If you have to ask the question,
there's no way.
You're in the wrong stream.
No, there's no way. Not a chance. Not even remotely possible.
Okay, Pavel says, hi guys, for maintaining weightlifting technique while building strength, what would be a good amount of snatch and clean and jerk? 2 to 3 snatch a week and 1 to 2 clean and jerk should be enough. And how intense? So certainly 2 or 3 snatch sessions and 1 or 2 clean and jerk sessions should definitely be enough in terms of maintaining quite good motor patterns. In terms of relative intensity, that's going to have to change slightly. So when you're in your accumulative phase of your strength period, I assume you're going to start with quite high volume work that's at quite low intensity. And then as you get towards the end of your strength block, you'll have lower volume with higher intensity. The relative intensity you'll be able to do for your snatch and clean and jerk is going to change throughout that time. There's going to be a point at the start where some sessions are super high volume and you're going to need to maintain quite a lot of muscle glycogen. So you can't do 8 sets of singles on the snatch at 70%, even though that in itself may not be incredibly fatiguing. It's going to be too much and you'll end up taking away from your strength phase. And that's what you want to make sure. You need to make sure you don't fall between the 2 stools of maintaining motor patterns and actually getting stronger. If you spend too much time maintaining motor patterns, you're not going to get any stronger. And this 2 or 3 month block will have been a waste, you know? So the relative intensity you're going to be able to do each week will change. For me, most of the time, I think people should be working between 60 and 70%, 2 snatch sessions a week, 2 clean and jerk sessions a week. And then I just like to keep them at doubles or singles during those sessions, making sure everyone is absolutely perfect and crisp. If we can't achieve the very good technique, you just simply drop the weight down. All you're doing in this session is maintaining a high level of quality. AI Campbell, are you on the AI Campbell?
Yeah, a horse-sized duck.
So I've actually looked up what 1,000 ducks look like, and I can picture in my head what. So the question is, would you rather fight 1,000 duck-sized horses or 1 horse-sized duck?
Horse-sized duck. Horse-sized duck. That's
I
can't be talked out of this.
You can't be.
No.
So I'm gonna.
There's no way you could 1,000 ducks. You've no weapon.
Oh yeah, sorry. You think the 1,000 ducks would be so much harder?
Yeah.
But it's 1,000 horse. Yeah. Because I looked up what 1,000 ducks would look like, and then I'm playing the mental gymnastics game of turning those ducks into horses. 1,000 is so many.
I've been bitten by a lot of horses in my time.
Yeah.
Don't ask why.
Imagine like those little nippers at you.
No, I still have scars in one of my hands.
Yeah.
When I bit my horses, so there's no way. No. One horse-sized duck. Sans weapon, I have more of a chance than 1,000 duck-sized horses.
See, what you're really up against there is getting to the neck, you know?
Yeah, but there's you couldn't
No, I think a duck-sized or a horse-sized duck is doable.
I think it's going to get messy and it's going to be a Game of Thrones where you're squishing someone's eyes. You
Oh,
know?
do you think?
Where else are you going to do?
I don't think it's going to go to the ground.
What are you going to? No, you're going to crawl up its neck
Yeah. Well, so I think you're going to go for an overhook over the neck. You're probably going to pull guard on its neck, but it will stay up like this.
No.
And then you're going to take the back of its neck,
No.
and it's going to be a...
That's a horse-sized duck. Like, how are you pulling guard? You're just going to...
No. As if you were jumping guard.
No.
It's not going to go to ground. And then you're going to go to the back. It'll be a rear naked choke on the back of its head.
That's not going to work.
How are you going to take it down?
It's going to have a neck this size.
Are you going to punch a duck in the head?
No, you're going to squish its eyes with your hand.
It has a big fucking beak.
No.
Its beak now on a horse-sized duck
You're going
is
to be
going to
behind
be
it, like.
this size.
Crawl up its neck.
And you're going to crush the back of its head from behind.
Listen to me. Its eyes, you retard.
Its eyes?
Yeah. What else?
You're going to put your
That's
fist
only...
through its eyes.
I'm fighting a horse-sized duck. What else am I going to do? Like,
No, you choke it out. I'm telling you.
Have you seen horses' necks?
I'm well aware of what a
There's
horse's
no way
neck
you
is.
could choke a horse out.
But it's not a horse's neck we're dealing with.
Yeah, but it's
We're dealing with a duck's neck
it's going to be
scaled to
thicker.
the size.
Yeah, it's going to be bigger.
I'm going to...
No, end the stream here. I'm sick of you. What do you think about a novice squatting and deadlifting 3 times a week? That's not a good idea. It's just way too much.
Bad idea.
That's just too much.
Room cleaning expert says, Garf, how is it possible you're 5'10"ish and you look like 5'5" on camera? Because he's not 5'10".
I'm actually 4'8".
Yeah. Garf is 4'3".
Yeah, on 4'4" on a good day.
And 115 kilos today.
The apparently says, guys, I squat jerk 12.2 kilo once in training, but I can only clean and jerk 12.1. Shall I send you next to your workout? Oh, these guys see this.
There he is.
Guys.
He's been here too many times. Gianpaolo, will you please tell us how to pronounce your name? Because
no, don't. I think it's better this way.
We do this every week.
Philippe is wondering about any thoughts on garlic bread as a hypertrophy superfood. I love pizzeria.
Jesus, I just love
pizza chains,
bread.
A pizza chain's garlic bread.
Yeah.
I love it. I just so good.
Anything that's bready for me, that's a superfood. Finn Vara says he doesn't wear clothes, or she doesn't wear clothes. Very nice.
Joshua says many t-shirts, please. John J saying he's waiting for the Republic t-shirt stands to come back.
They're never coming back.
John, they're never coming back. You
have to buy them on eBay.
If you don't get the t-shirts when they come up, our current system is they won't come back. There will be future iterations of Republic of Sikhistan,
but those t-shirts will never be back.
That exact Republic t-shirt won't be back, unfortunately. We might have a way of having more t-shirts on stock all year round coming in the future, but not in the next couple of months, I would say.
Okay. Electiva throws. Andrew says, "Hi lads, hope you're well. Packing my bag for my last competition in Bedford at the moment. Managed to win Scottish champs last weekend. Nice, in the name of Sikhistan. Well done. Gerf, did you see comment about sand stroke sawdust?
I did actually. So you're saying about putting sawdust in kind of around and
underneath the
stuff. I've tried sand before, and all I did was just get sand everywhere. But sawdust
could work.
Yeah.
Particularly like shavings.
Still buy sawdust now. Do you know that? It used to be free.
I think you just go to the place and cut them.
No. They sell it, you know. They won't buy it because lads come along and buy it from them, and then they sell it for stables. So you used to be able to take it away for free. Not anymore.
I know somebody who knows somebody who has a company in the UK.
Yeah.
And he's a millionaire and he just sells sawdust.
I'm telling you.
That's mad.
I might look into sawdust, but if it does work, then I'll have to clean it up.
Andrew, well done on winning Scottish champs.
Well done, more important.
You are out there hustling. Okay, Raymond DCR says, do you have your weightlifting athletes snatching and clean and jerking year round, even during strength and hypertrophy blocks? Yeah.
Mostly, yeah. Mostly. Most of them.
Most of the time for me with the weightlifters, if they're not snatching and clean and jerking, it's because they're injured or they're in some sort of weird situation where they can't get to a gym with a barbell and plates. And that might, in total, that might make up 4 to 6 weeks a year, you know?
Actually, interesting. The only time I'll have someone in a strength and hypertrophy phase who won't be doing snatching and jerks is a mid to early stage novice who really needs some strength training. But it's only because that'll be a period of 3 to 4 weeks, and then they'll move back into the kind of weightlifting. So sometimes some beginners just need a little break from the snatch and jerk, funnily enough, despite most evidence or most of the logic behind skill acquisition and learning, is they just need a little break from it, need to kind of put it aside for a few minutes or a few training sessions, do their strength training and fix those issues if the strength is their kind of issue. You know, if they have real like simple movement issues, if they've like poor quality front squats, if they've got bad quality back squats, if they've weak pressing, if they just kind of lack the kind of fundamentals you'd like to see, and they don't seem to be able to be progressing those fundamentals along with weightlifting, there is times where these kind of beginner lifters will get a break from snatch, clean and jerk, just to give them a head start on the quality of movement, because a lot of times then you'll see this quality of squatting and pressing stuff jump up ahead because it gets its due course and it gets its better time, and then it get back to the weightlifting. But most of the time, once you've begun beyond the beginner stage, there's never really an athlete who won't be doing some kind of snatch and clean and jerk all year round. And like sometimes that'll literally be one single or three singles, you know, something like that.
I'm just going to say the comment section is behind me with the standing rear naked choke on the neck.
I haven't looked down there.
Okay.
Garth looks comes an Irish superhero t-shirt, fresh t-shirt, strong look. Thanks, Barfro.
Kean says, opinion on 3 sets of 5 squat at RP 9 to 10, followed by 5 sets of 10 at 60% of max, 3 minutes rest once a week.
Is this a piss take? I don't know. No, it's not.
I don't think it's a piss take. And Kean, I don't want to be like in any way flippant with my answer to this.
Project Tab, is it?
If you ask Project this question, a question like this about something Project would be asked questions about, he will give you a very flippant answer. But this is bad. Thinking about training like this is a terrible way to think about training. Trying to program like this is a terrible way to program. And if you're an athlete and you're trying to use this to get better, you would be better doing almost anything else than this. The idea that you would do 3 sets of 5 at an RP 9 to 10, RP 9 to 10 is done. You're dead. It's over. If you did 1 set of 5 at an RP 9 to 10, you're done for 3 or 4 days afterwards, you know, unless you're using a 16-point RPE scale, which most people aren't. Most people are using 10. That would be terrible. Your relative intensity would be too high. And then the idea that you'd be able to do 5 sets of 10 on a back off set is undoable at that relative RP. So the use of RP is wrong. The use of an intensity that high for that many reps is wrong. Then the idea you do 5 sets of 10 at 60% of max. 5 sets of 10 at 60% of max is far too heavy. I would challenge you to do 5 sets of 10 at 50% of your max on a back squat and be in any way logically like the idea that you do that after the heaviest 3 sets of 5 of your life would be, I just couldn't possibly imagine how that would work. So don't use RPE. Don't go that heavy for 3 sets of 5. Don't go that heavy for 5 sets of 10. And certainly don't do 3 sets of 5 heavy, followed by 5 sets of 10 heavy in the same session with 3 minutes rest in between all of those 8 sets, and only do that once a week. Not to be a dick, but that's not good. I hope that was a piss take question.
Mike said, how should you transition from powerlifting to weightlifting gradually, or just quit on and go straight into a full on only training, focus on technique? I suppose it depends. Are you done with powerlifting, or is it some weightlifting really the thing you want to do? If it's weightlifting, then you should just go straight into weightlifting and pitter patter, let's get at her. But if weightlifting is something, or powerlifting something you want to get back to, then you could just slowly do it. But if you want to if your main priority is going to be weightlifting, then you should just get going on weightlifting. That's just literally you've a lot of ground to make up, and you've a lot of things to learn. You've a lot of things to do. So just stopping powerlifting, going weightlifting is honestly just the simplest answer there.
I much prefer the hard stop and just say you're done now.
Samuel's asking volume landmarks for hypertrophy training, specifically for squats. Volume landmarks.
I'll go first on this if you want. For hypertrophy training, to be honest, there's 2 things I think you should realistically be doing. And tracking your volume, tracking your weights you're lifting, tracking the total volume load over the course of the week, very, very valuable, right? But realistically, for hypertrophy training, you should be measuring cross-sectional area of the muscle with a tape or some form of measuring device So if it's biceps, quads, whatever it is, and then you should be measuring body mass. Hypertrophy training is about gaining muscle mass, right? Those gains are going to be very small. They'll take a very, very long time to accrue, but that's what you're trying to do with hypertrophy training. So in strength training or in athletic pursuits, we will really look at those volume markers. We'll have certain things like 5x5 is probably around 75% of 1RM. 3 or 4 sets of 10 at 50% is going to be a difficult session. But most of the time, for your hypertrophy training, it matters that you're doing a lot of volume. And then it matters that that weight you're doing the volume with increases from week to week. So you're constantly kind of pushing that stimulus. But besides that, the things that matter are the amount of muscle, not the actual thing you're doing. So if you could get the same sort of muscle breakdown happening with 5 sets of 10 at 20 kilos, it really doesn't matter if it's with 20 kilos or 30 kilos. What matters is that over the course of 2 or 3 months, that 20 kilos is going 20 to 22.5 to 25 to 30, whatever it is. And that gradually increases. And then the volume is gradually increasing over time as well. You'll have a number of things here that you probably want to start looking into, and that will be something called MRV, maximum recoverable volume. As far as I know, it's Mike from Renaissance Periodization coined that term, but he may not have coined it. And that's an amount of volume you can do in hypertrophy week, or in a week of hypertrophy training, where you can recover by the time you get back to the next session, right? So imagine if you do squats once a week, there's an amount of volume you can do where you're going to be able to squat again the next week without being inhibited by it. And there's an amount that would be far too much, right? So you always want to be creeping up around that maximum recoverable volume. The weight should always be creeping up over time. But the things you should be tracking is the size of the muscle and your body weight, and not necessarily the weights you're lifting.
Marian Wasaki, is he Polish? Say, who would you recommend as a technical model for someone who is 188 centimeters, relatively short arms, 6'1"?
Oh, that's me.
With relatively short arms. I don't think there's a weightlifter who exists with 6'1", relatively short arms. I'm thinking Q'n'A is like 6'1" or 2.
Yeah.
His clean style is quite good. You know,
the disadvantage using Q'n'A is the shortness of the legs and the length of the torso.
Yeah. Well,
when you see him as a technical model, like he can hang way out over the bar. He's like the opposite of me. I think if you're 188 centimeters, you're going to be longer legged. Yeah. And I think for longer legged lifters, Toma Lardina works very, very well.
Yeah. I'm just thinking it's not always the best thing to do is to model yourself off a lifter. Not always. Sometimes we do recommend it for sure, but sometimes I think you're better off looking at who has good technique and then trying to adjust yourselves to that technique rather than finding someone who is your body shape, because it doesn't always work out well for people in practice when they try and go and do it and try and make it work for them, you know. Because if we took Q'n'A, for example, who's probably relatively close to what you're describing, his clean technique would work, but if you went to try his snatch technique, it would be very, very unproductive for you, you know. So I'd be more inclined to go look for people who just have a good technical model and then try and copy them or work with that technical model as much as possible. So, you know, the problem with looking at people who have odd body shapes, you know, the fact that we can't even think of someone who's like 6'1" and short arms and weightlifting probably means they're going to have a stranger technical model and something that might not be the best for Marion. So you're probably better off going look at someone like Niku Vlad is quite tall from what I know. He's a phenomenal weightlifter, literally one of the best weightlifters ever. Technical model is great. You might be looking at Yuri Zakharevich, quite tall as well, or not quite tall, but he was a heavier lifter and a very, very good technique. From the modern day lifters, maybe we look at someone like maybe Akbar Drive. I like his clean and jerks technique, but his snatch technique leaves something to be desired. Andrea Ramnoff is a good example. There's the heavier weight, so people in the hundreds. There is some of the Korean lifters in the 1 or 2 category. His name is slipping my attention at the moment. Probably a good example. So just look for taller lifters in the heavier categories who have good technique, and don't worry so much about matching your exact body shape. I would say it can be an easy trap to fall into sometimes. And I don't want you to get caught up in trying to do stuff, because like if we did say clock off, his snatch would be a terrible way of copying, where his clean would be quite useful, but
I don't know who'd ever fall into that trap.
bum, bum, bum.
We picked a few questions.
Hold on, let me fix it.
Okay. Damakos Pillar says, what are your thoughts on lifting in flat shoes? I can't afford to buy proper weightlifting shoes at the moment. So, Damakos, there's a couple of things here. So the first thing is, absolutely, if you can't afford to buy weightlifting shoes, just start weightlifting in your flats. 2 or 3 things on this point. So the first thing is, the thing you're really going to have to work on, and the thing you'll have to work on more than anyone else, will be your ankle mobility, and dorsiflexion in the ankle will be the main thing that you'll have to work your ass on and really work hard to improve. So work on that every single day. If you're somebody who's naturally blessed with really good ankle mobility, some people just have great ankle. Hashtag blessed, like Gurf. Then you'll be able to hit those squat positions. You'll be able to achieve the requisite positions you need. You can go away and do lifting, right? If you're in that position, or if you've worked your way up to having the requisite ankle mobility you need, then the next thing you need to look at is the relative stiffness of the sole of your shoe, right? And particularly the sponginess of the sole. So a pair of shoes like this wouldn't be bad to lift weights in. They have a very, very thin sole. You're not going to move around a lot. Now, although the sole itself is quite flexible, it's not going to be absorbing any force. So imagine if I was to squeeze down here, there's no big spongy pad that's going to like absorb the force of my feet that I'm trying to impart into the floor. The other thing you need to look at is if there's movement side to side within the shoe. So a lot of the time when we buy shoes that are going to be quite comfortable to walk around in. Unfortunately, shoes that are comfortable to walk around in probably aren't the best shoes to lift in, because you need a bit of support. You need something that your foot will be quite tightly restricted in. Particularly in weightlifting, when you're moving your feet from a pulling position to a catching position, you don't necessarily want this big kind of wide spread out position. It's not ideal, because you have a lot of room for wiggle room in there. The last thing I'll say then on this point is that the main thing is to have a pair of weightlifting shoes, not necessarily to have the best pair of weightlifting shoes. And we're as guilty of this as anyone. Owen has €1 million worth of shoes.
Hey.
Owen, there's so many shoes that Owen owns that if Owen lost all of his weightlifting shoes, his net worth would be halved. I have lots of weightlifting shoes. We get lots of weightlifting shoes. We buy them to do reviews on them. People send us weightlifting shoes, and we're really glad they do. And we always give advice on, like, oh, these are the best shoes. These are the worst shoes. Don't go near those shoes there. Those shoes are terrible. The main thing is that you have a pair of weightlifting shoes. And if you can go on eBay or Craigslist or Dundeal or whatever it is, any of the CrossFitter pages, so like Irish CrossFitters is a great one, UK CrossFitters is a great one, UK CrossFit competitions, all of these will constantly have shoes for sale, and you can get a pair of shoes for €20 that are going to be your size, that will fit you quite well. Now, they mightn't be Nike Rom 2s in the box with the tags on that are absolutely perfect, but you really don't need that. You know, the first thing is you need a pair of weightlifting shoes, and then at some point down the line, you can start drastically over investing in them.
So Adam B said, do we see Matt Wenning breaking Tom Platz's squat challenge? Now, I don't want to talk shit, but in defense of other people who've tried it, Matt is squatting a lot higher.
Is he?
Than what the other people are doing. So it was actually in the video there.
I went to load the video, but a lot of time if I render load a video here, it slows down the stream.
It's it's almost a different thing.
Okay. Very wide stance.
Can you see the video? Oh, critique viewers, where? It's somewhere here. Yeah, it is like, look, you have to admit Tom Platz was squatting to full like as low as possible.
Wait, he's 42 years old.
Now it's very impressive, like squatting for 24 reps. Okay, no doubt about it. But man, like if beating his record, it's kind of not the same thing. I'll be honest. If you put a gun to my head, I don't know.
So let me see the squats.
2 seconds.
Okay, yeah,
they're pretty high. They're good squats.
They're good squats.
Doing 520 for that for a number of reps with any kind of squat is very impressive, of course.
Yeah,
but
absolutely, yeah.
It's not the exact same thing, for being fair to anyone else who tried it. You know, like there's half of a squat more there to go. Like, and
yeah,
I can talk.
It's legit as fuck.
Like,
it is legit as fuck.
As someone who squatted 235 or whatever for a set of 10, I can talk a little bit of shit on that and just say, like, it's a different thing. Like, it's not that what he did isn't impressive, but to give the lads their credit, who also attempted it, like Joe Sullivan and the other gentleman, squatting that high and wide is a different thing. Because it's not a powerlifting competition, it's the YouTube social media competition. So there is some difference. I would say, in my opinion.
PL Doom says I have a good tan. Thanks. PL Doom also asked a good question. What are your thoughts on doing isometrics in an in-season athlete? Really important. So the main thing for S&C with athletes is you don't break them. And then the second thing after that, after you make sure you don't break them, is that you make them slightly more resilient to being broken by their sport. So that's like on the priorities or tiers list, priority numero uno is that you as an S&C coach don't hurt them. And then priority number duzo is that you make them slightly more difficult to hurt. And isometrics for most athletes are the kind of main tool we'll use in terms of tendon and ligament strength and just joint health in general. Pretty much all athletes should be doing isometrics in season. The other massive advantage of isometrics is a really low impact. Like if you're doing isometrics with an athlete to work on their ankles, that is so much lower of an impact in terms of their overall week of training capital than you doing rebounding triple jumps or you doing some sort of hurdle drill where their ankles are really being taxed. The isometric is it's right up there.
Kifar Elias says, how important is maximal squat strength for fencing? Also, T-minus an hour and a half from a tough conditioning session. Wish me luck. As someone who doesn't remember what it feels like to have a tough conditioning session coming up, I can only imagine it's not nice. I love going jiu-jitsu, so I feel like that's count. But for maximal strength for fencing is super important. So if you look at like the athletic qualities that you need for fencing or the athletic qualities that are used heavily during your sport, change of direction is one of the massive ones because you're going forward and backwards as fast as possible. One of the big things, and a lot of the evidence is backed up by this, but you can use this if we think about this kind of logically, what you're doing when you're resisting force. So you're changing force, so change of direction. You're moving at speed forward, you're decelerating, you're coming to a stop, and then as fast as possible, you're reversing that direction, or you're reversing the direction and doing something else with your upper body. Now, one of the key aspects of that when we're looking at what are the forces act on you and the high forces, there's a lot of force acting your joints and ligaments. You're applying a lot of force as fast as possible. So having a lot of strength in reserve is strongly related, and there's a lot of studies on this in field sports athletes, that being stronger gives you faster change of direction and also protects you from the injuries of change of direction. So super important for fencing is to have a strong squat. You don't necessarily need to test your maximal squat at any point or all the time, but a high squat would be very useful, especially relative to body weight, because these forces are enacted generally are described in relative to body weight. So if you're looking at, I'd like to see, if possible, somewhere in the region of a double body weight back squat for fencing or something like that. For most sports, when they have high levels of change of direction, it's very, very, very useful. And a double body weight squat is very possible for people with some reasonable training and isn't majorly taxing. So I think maximal squatting, big squats, super important for stabby. Jonathan Swain is saying, how applicable are front squats in the sport of powerlifting, especially low bar squat? Many powerlifters say they're useless and Olympic lifters are the only one that should be using them. I'd agree with that. Front squats are minimally useful for powerlifting. Front squats have basically no impact on the back squat. Now, that's not to say front squats aren't a useful exercise for powerlifters for certain things, but as like a supportive, direct exercise for back squat, front squats aren't really it.
Siska Base says, what training should I do after a 14 to 16 week weightlifting program? You should probably do another 4 to 6 years of weightlifting programs. It's the unfortunate truth about weightlifting is that all it asks of you is all of your time forever, and you will continue to become more technically proficient. Most of the time, you will continue to become stronger and faster and more powerful up until a certain point. And most of the time, you will become more proficient in competition and lifting max end weights. So we have a thing here about like deload periods or taking a break in training. I like them to be a bit more planned. We've definitely said it before, and Broderick has said it before, that deloads are like shits. You'll know when you need one. And that's kind of how I run it with a lot of people. But we have a basic plan, you know, of like, we're going to push for at least another 8 weeks or at least another 10 weeks. And then you just take 3 or 4 days of lighter training, or you might take a week of lighter training and you just get back into it. If it's been 14 to 16 weeks of weightlifting training from hell and you're very, very fatigued, then you might need to take a week of lighter training and then 2 or 3 weeks of kind of preparatory phase training, hitting the lifts again with some volume and some intensity, and then getting back to relatively important training weights. But yeah, unfortunately, it's not really a thing where you do 14 weeks of weightlifting, then you go to a strength phase, 14 weeks of weightlifting, then do a strength phase. You have to just keep doing weightlifting for a long time.
If 4200 is asking, are we going to give judo a go? No, because I do not need any concussions.
I have so many concussions.
My neck, the way it is doing all right.
I'd love to do judo.
Yeah, but
I would love it.
Yeah, no, but
it's my favorite thing is throwing people in jiu-jitsu.
We watch more judo in the office than we do with BJJ.
Yeah,
it's not a joke. Like,
yeah, we watch a lot of judo. Age of Age says, do you guys program women's S&C work differently than men for BJJ or combat sports? If so, how? And what are the outcomes of that? Excited to start Seek Combat program later this year. So, in general, with one-to-one athletes, we do program females slightly differently to males, in the same way we program males slightly differently to all others, or like to each other. There is a difference, female S&C work to male S&C work. The difference tends to be, though, in the relative percentage where you can handle a lot of volume. And this is something people don't like. If you look at a weightlifting program for females versus weightlifting program for males, females will be able to do a lot more volume at higher intensities than males will. They can handle a lot more volume at their higher intensities. Now, part of that is because of the physiology of females, and part of it is because of the absolute weights being different for females than they are for males. The actual weights themselves are different. For the S&C work for combat sports, we don't tend to see too much of a difference because the absolute weights are quite low for everyone. So if we were able to do 10% more volume at 5% higher intensities for females in weightlifting than we would be with males in weightlifting, the thing is, in combat sports, a lot of the time the weights are all quite low. Everyone's coming in at a beginner to intermediate level of lifting weights or power training. You're not going to really see the massive difference between that 10 and 5% here versus the 10 and 5% less here. So a lot of the time, because BJJ and combat sports S&C tends to be quite general, and it should always be quite general, you won't see a massive difference in the women's versus the males. Now, if it was a one-to-one athlete, we would probably creep up those relative intensities. We might creep up the volume ever so slightly. There's obviously some other changes you make with female programming. But in general, for combat athletes, no. For strength sports and power sports athletes, yes.
My last one is, Brad Reynolds asked this a few times. He's asked, but I'm wondering about the difference between staggered versus square feet and walkout of squat. The only reason weightlifters do staggered feet is because they're being lazy with the squat. You should definitely unrack it with squared feet, not staggered feet for show.
Thanks to everyone who tuned in. These great pieces, show them your t-shirt, great pieces of merchandise and the pants will be available very soon. In one last piece, any rugby players who are about to go in season, there's an offering that will be coming up for you in the next week or 2 weeks. An offering both in a general in-season training program, and then also we'll be taking on a group of rugby players to be managed as a group for their in-season training. So if anyone's interested in that, just pop us over an email. You'll be hearing plenty about it in the next couple of weeks, but we just said we'll give you a little preview. Okay, thanks guys.
Thank you.